My paranormal stories. Hello. I know I'll get a lot of skeptics saying that this isn't real, but all I want to say to you is boo hoo. Anyways, I'm a 17-year-old female if that's important. Me and my friends decided to go over to my friend's house. We'll call her Maria. Me and Maria are both best friends. When we met in kindergarten, we've been inseparable. My friends Josh, Tyler, Maria, and me were all over at Maria's house while her parents were gone. We were all bored and decided to tell the ever so original horror stories. We prank called, but we got a little too old for that. Tyler then suggested we do the midnight game. I asked what it was, and he explained, "You need a main wooden door, a drop of your own blood, a candle, matches, and paper. You have to write your full name on it and get a drop of your own blood and let it soak through the paper. By the door, light the candle, knock on the door 22 times. Open the door, blow out the candles, and relight it as soon as you can, and avoid the midnight man." Or something like that. I forgot about it since I did this months ago, and I said no way, and Maria agreed. But as we thought into it, we thought it could be fun. We got all our own supplies, and we all did as the game told. The game had begun. I thought it was a load of bullshit, but I started to feel watched. Then everything had changed. It felt like I was falling off of a cliff to a bottomless pit. When I got back, my friends looked at me as if I was crazy. Apparently, I was screaming my head off at the window. I shook it off, but didn't realize that if you are close to the Midnight Man or he gets you, he shows you one of your greatest fears. Mine was falling to death. My candle had went out. Oh shit, I said. Either it was my mind or it was real. I saw something. It looked as much as that 106 dude from the SCP game, I believe. I relit my candle and ran to my friends. I told them everything. We created our own circles of salt and waited till 3:33 a.m. And when we did, we felt like we could breathe again. Maria started bawling her eyes out while hugging me and asking if I was okay, in which I was, but maybe a little scarred from this. Ever since I did that game, I started having horrifying nightmares on and on and on. I'll wake up in the middle of the night to see that thing staring at me in the corner of my room. I could move just fine, but when I blinked, it would move. Ever since then, I started to sink into a deep depression, suicidal thoughts, and I even self-harm because of it. I don't want to open up to a therapist. What would I say anyways? I did the fucking midnight game for shits and giggles, and now I see that same thing every single night? Hell no. But I accidentally astral projected, and I had my guider. She told me it's not real, and this game had been making this real for me. That I need to get over my fear of this thing, and ever since then, I kinda felt at peace, and it's been a lot better. I mean, I hardly see it anymore. It still happens, but that's because I'm only scared of how it looks like. Utterly terrifying. And also, to clear crap up, no, I do not do drugs. Cyanide Hill. This is the story of me and my cousin in Caldwell, Texas. The town itself is extremely small and is about 50 or 60 miles northeast of Austin. A lot of people on my dad's mother's family lives there, and I've been going there since I was 5 years old, and visit at least twice a year to this day. This town is close to Central Texas, and if you're from here, you know that means the place is gonna be with the rolling hills, very country and very old school. At this time, I was babysitting my second cousin's youngest. The neighbor was literally a stone's throw away. They also helped train and nurture abused animals. They had a 2-year-old pit bull that was trained to be a fighting dog. Unfortunately, they believed it was able to be retrained. The pit broke its chain and jumped a short 3-foot fence and tried to attack my cousin. I shoved my arm down its throat and hit it a few times with a rock. It was knocked out. I threw it over my shoulder and knocked on the neighbor's door. They came out and I said, "If that dog breaks that chain and attacks my family, I will put a bullet in its fucking head." If I said that in Houston, I would have gotten arrested for a terrorist threat. But out there, that's life and how you handle things. This happened when I was 13 years old and was working at a chicken farm to get money, and I was gonna use it to buy my first base. I got the money quickly and was practicing constantly. My cousin, let's call him Bill, was a very adventurous type. It was my weekend off, so he snuck out to my great-grandmother's house, hopped in his car, and explored the local land. This is not something we should have done to begin with, because it's trespassing and you can get shot. The place we were exploring was covered in hills and had bananas and almonds growing on it. Cheekily, we called it Cyanide Hill. Everything was fun and games. It was a time of our youth, and we were both adventurers. The first 3 nights, nothing happened. We explored and picked bananas to eat while listening to coyotes and some things that sometimes howled with them. It would throw them off and they'd follow suit with us. But the 4th day left me, and Bill scared and terrified for weeks after that. Even till this day, this very day I'm writing this email, I still see it in my dreams, and the idea of its claws on me again makes me feel like I'm being dragged into the deepest depths of hell. So, when we went to Cyanide Hill, we always packed heat. I had a .357 Colt Python, while my cousin had his Bushmaster ACR. I felt like we were on a Black Ops mission in Central America or something. I stopped to take a piss, and I told Bill to wait for me. But I don't think he heard me, so when I turned around, he was gone. The area itself was unusually thick for a forest. The banana trees were set in circles, and only in certain areas, so the owner could get them all. At this moment, I walked around quietly, calling Bill's name. Bill. 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 I did not want to say anything too loud, cause again we were trespassing and didn't want to alert too much attention. Eventually I gave up and just aimlessly wandered till I noticed the woods were quiet. No crickets, cicadas, toads, coyotes. Nothing. At this moment, all I could hear was my breathing and my boots on the summer grass. Suddenly I heard movement behind me, but I stayed still. The movement itself didn't sound human. It wasn't the slow 1, 2, 1, 2 of a human footstep. It was an odd pattern. No, there wasn't a pattern at all. It was just a jumble of steps, not like a human, but more like a drunk horse. But at the same time, they were fluid and had a purpose to it. At this moment, I refused to move and breathe, only when I had to keeping my hand on the handle of my gun for the ready. But then suddenly it stopped. Why? It's not fooling me. It wasn't either still or in a tree. It could have just disappeared like that. It had to be there. At this point, my curiosity got the best of me, and as quietly as I could, I peeked around the tree and saw it. On all fours, it was about 3.5 foot, white-skinned, but covered in scars, 5 long fingers on each hand ending with claws. It had no lips, and its eyes seemed empty. I couldn't tell because the moon didn't have much lighting here. Then it stood, I mean, it had to be at least 7.5 foot tall. It stood above a branch. Me and my cousin measured out to be 7 foot, and its shoulders grazed the branch. It wasn't skinny, but more on the lean side. I couldn't see any bones, but it also wasn't thick either. Then, the thing, it started sniffing around and looked right at me before letting out a loud noise that sounded like a large lizard hissing. At this moment, I was ready. I had another 12 rounds in my pocket, so I pulled out my guns, stepped around the tree, and shot 3 bullets into its torso. It kneeled over, covering the area I shot it in, and I saw blood dripping down it. Then, the thing, it looked up at me, and I realized it was pissed off. At that moment, I realized I couldn't fight it, so I started to run. I looked back, and I could see that this thing wasn't running, but instead lumbering towards me, and it was still catching up to me. What was I gonna do? I mean, if this thing catches me, I'm friggin' screwed. I kept running and running and running till I came to a clearing, and the thing grabbed me by the leg and pulled me a few feet back. The thing, it slammed one hand next to me for balance and gripped my entire head in the other hand, sniffing me all over and breathing all over me for a good 30 seconds. This was it. I was gonna die, being eaten alive by this monster in the middle of friggin' nowhere. At this moment, I started to cry and I screamed, "Do it! Just do it already!" It reared its head back like it was in confusion, like it didn't know what was going on. Then suddenly, just as suddenly, it got off me and ran back in the direction of where I shot it. Silence. I lay there in the dirt for some time. I'm not sure how long I lay there for. And I didn't even care. Then I heard Bill. I stood up and realized he was going down at the bottom of the hill. I searched around and found my gun. I holstered it and slid down to the bottom of the hill and found him cocking his ACR over and over like some kind of madman. I took the gun from him. I helped him to his feet and we got back to the car. This time I drove home. I know for a fact that he saw the same creature, because the next day he had drawn it 20 times. After a couple days, he was back to normal. But when I asked him about it, he said, "It's only the beginning." I don't know what he means by that. To this day, I started getting into videos like this just last year, and I've learned a lot, but not on mine. I still don't know what the creature was, Rake, Skinwalker, or Wendigo. Why did it let me live, or why does it exist? Maybe I'll never know, and I'm fine with that. Spooky stories. Hey, just wanted to say that I love your videos and the way you narrate things. I've terrified myself from many of your countless videos, but still watch them. Anyways, I'm not sure if you'll read this, but anyways, I have a couple of creepy stories to tell. They aren't that creepy, but creepy enough. I'm also not that good at writing, so I hope it's not too crappy. Anyways, the first story starts during the night when I woke up needing to go to the bathroom at 3-something a.m., otherwise called the witching hour. I got out of bed groggily and went to the toilet, using the moonlight as my guide through the hallway. Additional information: from my bathroom, you can literally see right down to the front door, which is frosted glass and has a window at the side of it, with a veil see-through curtain hanging on it, so outside isn't completely visible. I went into the toilet and pulled the cord to turn on the light. I turned around and was able to sit down when I saw the silhouette of a person standing right outside my front door, behind the window with the see-through curtain. At this moment, I immediately pushed the bathroom door so that it was slightly ajar, but could still allow me to see the doorway downstairs. I couldn't see any details of the person, of the figure, apart from it being tall because of the curtain, but I saw the obvious shadow of someone standing, just standing. For some reason, however, my sleepy, tired brain assumed it was the postman, until I remembered that it was 3 a.m. in the morning. I then thought it was a burglar casing the joint, but they didn't even do anything, they just stood there. I was frozen to the spot, staring at the figure to see if it would move at all. I was terrified. I wanted to run so badly to my mom's room and scream bloody murder. But at that moment, I couldn't bring myself to move, blink, breathe. For an agonizing 5 slow minutes, I stood there and watched the dark figure that didn't even move. Just stood and stared into the house from the see-through curtain. They would have definitely known that I was there because the bathroom was clearly visible from the outside window at the front door. The person then suddenly just turned and walked away from the door to the side of my house, where they could either go down the path into the street or go into my backyard. I prayed for the first option. As soon as the figure disappeared, I hesitated for a moment, but proceeded to quickly tiptoe my way down the stairs and dash to the door to see if it was locked. It was, thankfully. I then peered up from behind the veil curtain out onto the garden and street. The street lamp flooded the area surrounding it with a pale light. Everywhere else was dark. But there was no one there despite seeing a person less than 15 seconds prior. I went round into my living room and also looked out the main window. Still no one. My legs then took me into the kitchen. I turned the lights on and stopped dead in my tracks. The back door was open, and I'm not talking about slightly ajar, I'm talking wide fucking open. I panicked at this point and quickly shut the door, trying not to make too much noise. My fumbling fingers eventually locked the door, and I looked around me. Was someone inside the house? A feeling of dread came over me, and I hesitantly looked in the cloak cupboard with a kitchen knife clutched in my hand, feeling around between the different textured coats. I didn't find anything anywhere in the house. Nor did I sleep for the rest of the night. This is the second story. You don't have to add it if you don't want to. One winter evening, I was home alone, and I was so tired I fell asleep on my carpet next to my electric fire with a few pillows and blankets in the living room. I had music on in the background from my phone, and I remember being awake then when I shut my eyes. I felt myself being pulled involuntarily into sleep. I panicked and tried to open my eyes, but I couldn't open them, and I eventually gave in to the sensation of being pulled out of consciousness. Sorry, I'm finding it hard to explain this. The next thing I remember is trying to open my eyes again, and I found it hard to open them again, but I did, and I was still on the floor with music playing in the back. But something was different. I could feel a presence standing right behind where my head was on the pillow. I then heard the presence giggle like a child, like an eerie sound of sorts. And the childlike laughter morphed into hysterical adult laughter. I got scared and tried to turn my head to see who the presence was, but I struggled too. I felt like I was so exhausted I could hardly move or turn my head. But I eventually did and saw the bottom half of this presence. It was wearing a black cloak, and I noticed that its feet weren't normal feet. But I'm not sure if I saw claws for feet behind the cloak because I couldn't see much at that moment. All I knew was that the feet themselves were not human. At that moment, I tried to reach my arm out to touch the cloak, but I was again overwhelmed with the same exhausted feeling again. But I did manage to reach out and feel the cloak, but there was there was nothing to feel. I was so confused. Kept trying to touch it, but nothing was there. I then heard footsteps walking around in the hallway upstairs. My house isn't that big, so I know it was from the hallway, and I heard my bathroom door open and the toilet flush. In my mind, I was thinking, who is that upstairs, because there was nobody home but me. I was so confused, and again, I suddenly felt that overwhelming feeling of being involuntarily pulled out of consciousness. Now, I was not in my living room, but I was floating high in the sky. I could hear the music from the speakers, and I was thinking why I was floating, why I had this particular song on my playlist. I was then dropped from such a height, and I felt that stomach-dropping feeling of falling through the air onto the ground. Before I even reached the ground, I woke up. I was back in my living room on the floor, and that same song was playing in the background. I had this blinding headache, and felt that familiar weak, exhausted feeling right through my body. My hands wouldn't stop shaking for hours after it.